The August Speakers Bureau meeting, we have a bang up meeting for tonight. I hope we don't bang up too much, but we do have 3 speakers, a speaker who is seeking qualification, and 2 qualified speakers speaking. And we are expecting a special, I call him a special guest. He's the youngest guest we ever had. Got his QS at 18. And he said he's going to come by and visit us. He's getting ready to go back for his year at Vanderbilt University back in Tennessee. So we will have had, the old thing when you went back to school, your English teacher would tell you, what did you do last summer? Put that down on your desk and go away so she can start doing her schoolwork and get you guys off her back. But so we're doing the opposite. He's been gone in school for a year. We just have to come back and say a few words about it. What first year of school at Vanderbilt University is about. As I said, we have 3 speakers. We have an excellent program. We have someone seeking their qualification. We have some excitement coming up next month, and which I will talk to a few people and give you a little more information about that. We have a program pretty well set all the way until November, so we're going strong right now. I wish we had more people in the room, but hopefully they're not having too much trouble working their way through the north entrance to get to where we are. As is usual, I have a number of people I have to thank for our existence here. First of all, it'd be Sandy Emilino for getting our foot in the door. So far, we've kicked our foot out of the door, so we get to keep meeting in this wonderful facility that too often is going to waste by not having enough people to guide. So thank you, Sandy Emilino. Thank you, Sharon Kennedy, for putting out the publicity. When you see those flyers that come with the Tuesday District News or separately, that she's the one that puts all that information together. So that's really important. Great, thank her. We thank Deanne and Rob Gunman for all the tech work they do to put this together, make sure we can reach the ones in the audience. So thank you very much for that. And especially I have to thank Michael Alexander for stepping in. I wasn't sure what kind of shape I'd be in since I had 5 implants and a tooth extraction on Monday, so I'm wondering I'm even walking. So I'm here, but he's here, and he's going to be the MC today. I will be introducing our first speaker, but after we'll let Michael start off, then he'll come back to me to give me the reins to introduce our qualified speaker. Michael, take it away.
Thank you, sir. Welcome everybody who's here in person and everybody who's here online.
Stay there.
District 12, like many districts, has a speakers bureau so that we can present to you some really great speakers, and we can take them not just to Toastmasters, but more importantly, to get the ideas and the word out to the world.
So
this is our goal. And I'm hearing, I think I'm still hearing you, Tom, talking in the background there. So I'm going to move right into the exciting people to hear, because that's not me, and bring you our first qualified speaker candidate. We're very excited to have her. We're very excited to hear what she's got to say. And I'm going to have her mentor, Tom Jameson, come back and give us a full introduction.
Thank you, Michael. And I thank you for taking over this meeting, and I thank you for being here to help out and to help run the meeting. I think that's a good thing to have our QSs conduct the meetings from time to time. So I am especially proud of being able to introduce our qualifying speakers tonight. I heard her speech, and actually she has spoken before this group before. We had a literary night. We had all the book writers. She came in and talked about her book. Her book is Fairwood to Freedom. It's no secret because it was in the publicity, right? And I heard her. She belonged to a club. She came and spoke to a club that we had and gave that speech. Spoke fantastic, which often our QS candidates speak to, and gave her speech there. She came to my home club in 1348 and gave part of the speech there. And I was so confident in her skills that probably against my own rules, I've already sent her out. She spoke at our Kiwanis club that we sent our speakers to. But she has spoken a lot of places. She has a message that works for so many people, towards youth. She's done a number of youth in teaching. I remember one particular story that I have to share. She may tell me I shouldn't have shared too much, but one particular story where she was speaking to a junior high class for an assembly. And I was at a lot of school assemblies, and I could attest to the fact that the principal was right when he said he was amazed that how well they paid attention to what she had to say, because they never pay attention in assembly. And I'll attest to that being true. So if you just imagine yourself at the school, and she tells us, the students, tells the stories that she tells and the impact it might have on them. I am particularly proud of having Hilda Valenzuela give her a speech that may move you to tears. I know it did. I came close to that more than once, and hopefully her message will resound wherever she goes, including tonight. Hilda.
I stand there and I remember being very hot. It's a very hot day and I couldn't move, but that's not what made it difficult. It wasn't moving. It was the fact that as I look around, there were heads everywhere. My dad was behind me and his ribs were pushing my back, and I didn't want to bother him, but people kept pushing my brother against me. And I remember thinking, how long can I stand here? And the next thought that came to my mind was, if we're standing outside in the elements and I'm looking at the sky, why is it that I can't breathe? Why is there such lack of air? And I remember doing this. And as nighttime came, we had been standing for about 24 hours, maybe 36, and the rain started to fall. And I didn't know that you could sleep through rain. But I remember just falling asleep and not being able to fall down because we were such tied to each other, so close to each other that we couldn't fall. My feet kept sinking, and I knew because of the smell that it wasn't quite mud, but I kept thinking, it's mud. It's just mud, like when I played outside. And 48 hours later, I'm still standing there, and I'm still looking at the sky. And my dad says, Gandhi survived 41 days without food. And I snapped and said, are you telling me we can be here for 38 more days? That was the teenager in me. And the question is, why? Why would somebody survive that at 14 years old? But I came to the conclusion that if the why is bigger than the circumstances, the why always wins. Why was I standing there? Maybe because I wanted to be free. See, it all started when I was in 1962, when the United States arch rival, the Soviet Union, decided that it was a good idea to put nuclear weapons in Florida, 90 miles away from Florida. I don't know who in the Kremlin thought that was a good idea. I don't know who they thought was going to allow that. But the United States had a why. And the why was to defend a country. And they told Russia, you cannot have weapons here. And Russia said, we will. And for the first time, the United States and Russia, for 13 days, await nuclear war. Children in the United States were being taught to hide under the desk. We came to DEFCON 2. It was the only time in the history that we have come to DEFCON 2. On the 13th day, the why of the United States was bigger, and the Russians knew it. And so they said, we'll pack up and leave. But before we do that, Nikita Khrushchev wrote a document, and President Kennedy signed it. And it's the Kennedy-Khrushchev deal that sealed my fate. It said Russia would not put nuclear weapons in Cuba, but the United States will not intervene at all in the business of Cuba. Zero intervention. That sealed my fate. Our neighbors to the north could not intervene, and to the south was Haiti. My country became Alcatraz. It was easier to escape from Alcatraz than from communist Cuba. Our jails were filled with prisoners. Our firing squads were busy. Trucks and loads of prisoners were being fired and killed. I was raised there. By 14, I had suffered so much in the hands of the communists for being a Christian, I almost had calluses in my hand, because every time they asked, where's your bandana that represents being a communist, I had to say, I'm not a communist. And every other day, somebody said, put your hand out, and there goes the ruler. This hand almost had calluses. My why for trying to escape was bigger than the circumstances. And in this Alcatraz type of style, with no way to go, the Cubans became very, very creative. And one of the creative ways was to go into embassies, friendly embassies. And so it happened that on April 1st, 1980, 6 Cubans got into a bus and crashed into the Peruvian embassy. Why the Peruvian embassy was one of the few countries that will not bow to Castro. In the firing that usually takes place when these people try to crash into embassies, the guards try to kill them any which way they can. And if they make it inside, by God's grace, they have political asylum. In this shooting, 1 guard was killed. And the dictator demanded the 6 people inside. The Peruvian ambassador said, we're not giving you the 6 people. What's the difference between I killed them and I hand them to you and you killed them? And the dictator looked them straight into his eye and said, you don't know how to kill, but I do. This man is now 77 years old and he's one of my heroes, because at 33, his why for saving the 6 people was bigger than standing up to a dictator. Castro went on the radio and told the Cuban people that the Peruvian embassy was up for asylum, was opened. Within 48 hours of his announcement, 10,800 people found themselves inside the embassy. The embassy was 28,000 square feet. It was just 2 buildings surrounded by a fence. How do 10,800 human beings fit into 28,000 square foot of space? It was because the why, to be free, was bigger than the circumstances. As the days went by and the chaos started, the story of what happened there could be told only to people who lived that saga. If I explain it, you wouldn't believe it. It's when human beings become animals. It's when people take food from each other's mouth. It's when somebody beats someone over a piece of bread. That's what happens. As the days went by, it turns into weeks, it turns into months. The injured get put outside, the dead get taken. The ones that can't handle it anymore, the ones that don't have enough why. And if they do, because they want to be free, their 5-year-old, it's a bigger why than being free. So the why of being free becomes small compared to your circumstances. On the 53rd day, we were put on a small boat to the United States. So as you can see, when the publisher asked me to write the story of what happened inside the Peruvian embassy, he only wanted the story of what happened inside the embassy. I didn't want that story to be told. I hadn't even told my husband and my children. That story was for us. What happened there was for us. But he wanted to write the story, and I was okay with it, until he said, this story is not about the United States. Those were magic words. to me. I didn't have to hear anything else. See, on the 53rd day, Castro put us in a small boat towards the United States. He didn't put us in a small boat towards Peru. And there we were, in the middle of the Caribbean, on a small boat that was supposed to sink. When the captain saw my dad was not coming out of his coma, which we children, my 3 brothers and I, were used to it. My mother had died when I was 8. So my father and my 3 brothers, so we had. My why was not seeing my 17-year-old and 20-year-old brother go to a Cuban prison. Every time I didn't eat, every time I didn't feel like I could survive another hour, I remember the boys and I thought they cannot go to a Cuban prison. So as we are on the boat, the captain panics and calls the Coast Guard and says, "Would you come and pick this man up?" I knew he was just passed out, like he had passed out for days before. But as the gurney from the small boat goes into the big boat, into the Coast Guard, one blabbermouth on the boat tells another, "The man died. That's why he doesn't want him here." Well, that did it for little 14-year-old Hilda. She went crazy. She went over the gurney and jumped and held on in a way that men could not pull my fingers apart from the mesh. I was not going to let him go. He had died. And I thought, this is it. There I go up to the Coast Guard. And what I saw was, as he went over, I saw soldiers with paddles and oxygen trying to save a man that didn't look much like a man. He had not touched his hair for 53 days. His beard, his clothes had not been washed for 53 days. Nothing could describe the condition of this man. And here are US soldiers trying to save him, and they won't stop, and they won't stop. And no matter what happens to this great country of ours, that's my vision of the United States. That's what we do. We save first. As the boat took off, and sometime later it arrived in Key West, the person that welcomed me with a smile, 14-year-old Bones, was a soldier, a United States soldier with a smile. I called my uncle because my dad had told us, whoever makes it to the United States, and one of you will, he said at the embassy, get the phone number from my pocket and call my brothers. So I called my uncle right away and I said, my dad is breathing. He has oxygen. My brothers are somewhere at sea. But I felt safe. I was okay because I was in the United States and somehow I was going to be okay. About 5 hours later, the little boat with the 3 faces of my siblings showed up and I saw them. They had not drowned. They made it to the United States. My uncle picked us up. We stopped by a convenience store. We had brought a friend along. There was somebody at the embassy, a young man that was there by himself. And he kind of took on to our family. So my uncle stops at the 7-Eleven and there's all 5 of us looking at stuff. I had never seen a store like that. Cuba lives on rations, small, tiny little food rations. I had never seen sandals and ice cream. Do you know the only ice cream store in Havana? You have to go inside the store to eat the ice cream. They don't sell ice cream outside the store. Imagine that. In the United States, no ice cream outside. What a nightmare. But there we were at the store. The friend of ours says, this is what they call a mall. And we all say, oh, a mall. Yes, it's where they have everything under one roof. So from there on, the 7-Eleven became a mall. To all of us, we didn't know any better. The truth is, as I was looking into this, the attendant said something to my uncle. He said I couldn't be in the store because I didn't have shoes. When my uncle interpreted and I looked down, it was the first time I realized that I didn't have shoes. For 50 some days, they didn't bother me. Somehow, when you live like a little animal, it doesn't bother you. I panicked. I went outside. I ran to the car where my dad was, and still in bad shape. I kneeled down and I was crying and sobbing like a dramatic 14-year-old. They kicked me out of the store. I can't go in. Among other things, my dad said, sweetheart, your feet touch the land of the free. It touched the United States. None of us have done that. I felt important. My question has always been, what is my why? If my why is to study hard for a test, what is that test going to get me? If my why is to be here today, why am I doing it? Because certainly the book sales is not. We all know what Amazon does. I think it's pennies that you make on the book. My why was to bring a message. And the message that I wanted to keep such way down that no one ever knew when I went by. No one ever knew that I ate a raw potato on the 5th day because I had not eaten anything at all. That potato with that dirt looked so good. Nobody ever knew, and nobody needed to know. But once the cat was out of the bag, the why has to be bigger. And my why is to let people know that no matter what political party you belong to, no matter how you want to vote, but you have to vote because that is the right denied to so many. Half the world is denied that right, and you get to vote. And you get to be part of a system. Don't complain, because freedom is not free. Freedom is fragile, and it could be taken away. Because in 1959, Cuba was nothing but Vegas. It was Vegas. Imagine Vegas, where now everybody lives on ration, where just the thought of a free thought gets you to jail. Imagine Vegas, where your children have to wake up and go to school every day and say, pioneers for communism. That is the oath every morning. The why we'd always justify our circumstances. The why got me to wear this shorts for 53 days. I never took them off. They were kind of falling off. I had to make a knot right here and a knot right here, because you do tend to lose a lot of weight when you don't eat for days end, and then you live on a 800-calorie diet. The why was to be free, and I got to be free. And I got to be free barefoot. Mr. Toastmaster.
Okay, now the easy part's over.
Yes.
Now comes the hard part.
I love the hard part. I love the hard part. This is my
Well, we
favorite.
start with our qualified speakers to get some comments from them. And I will, we have a couple in the audience, but can we get the screen? I'll be able to call on ones. I see my co-chair there, Michael, and I'm sure he'll have some comments, but do we have any comments from the peanut gallery up here on the screen?
Oh, I will.
Oh, I see you, Charlotte. Okay, Charlotte, you're on.
Oh, I am so proud to know you. I am so proud that you are part of us. And to be able to tell your story, you took my heart. I am so glad you're here. And I'm so glad. I could not stop listening to every little detail you said. So I want you to know that I thought it was well planned. well executed, well delivered, and welcome to the team.
Well, wow.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
we
you.
can stop now.
Uh,
We can stop now.
Trying to be dramatic, I would pick out a handkerchief and dab her eyes, because I've heard her speak it a number of times, and I told her exactly that.
One of these days, I'm going to tell the story without breaking down.
That's important for us to get those messages from you. All right, do I see any other hands up there? First starting with QS's, but then anybody else? David?
How's my sound? Is it okay from here?
Yes.
Okay, just want to double check. Sometimes my computer does weird things on me. I really enjoyed the story. I think it's a story that needs to be told a lot more, especially nowadays. I think what's happened to the younger generation doesn't appreciate all the sacrifices and things that have gone on in the past and the things that people have done. In particular, when you look at the idea of how we are as a nation today. Great story, great way you told it, very, very passionate. I enjoyed the passion of the presentation. A couple of glitches were obviously there when you were getting a little emotional or you lost track of your speech for a second, but it was fine. It didn't interrupt from your message whatsoever. Good message, well orchestrated and organized well in the storytelling part of it.
Thank you.
I did enjoy it. Thank you very much for a
Thank
great
you.
presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else? Oh, I see Michael has a comment now. Good. Michael?
Thank you, Hilda. Very powerful speech, and you had us hooked for almost all of it. And in the beginning, I recommend you start with all the Cubans in the Peruvian embassy, 10,000 of them in a squishy area, and then say something like, how could this come to be? And then
Okay.
you could refer back, because there was a really long lead up to that's a very powerful image. And then you never told us what happened to those thousands and thousands of Cubans in the Peruvian embassy. But I think that's where all of a sudden you got my interest. The history of Khrushchev and Castro, that doesn't move me. 10,000 people in the courtyard of the Peruvian embassy, or 6 people driving their truck through the gate. Now you're talking. And I think that's
Okay.
how you could hook your audience earlier.
Thank you.
Right. And I love your why, because it's one of my major themes as well, is to know your why. And though I love the story of the Coast Guard saving your father, I'm not sure how that fit in your why. Yes, the United States is a great place. And if your story is about how you were welcomed in the US, that wasn't really your why. Your why was freedom. And I think that, I think I see a whole speech on just your father and what you learned from him, but that wasn't today's speech. So I'm wondering if that speech is so powerful, it should be in another talk. But that's my 2 cents. But nonetheless, I think the whole theme of the barefoot and freedom is super powerful. Thank you, Hilda. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Michael.
Muchas gracias.
Comment, but something that I think Connie put out in the Speakers Bureau News, and that is a reminder to QSs that really you have a responsibility to have more than one speech. And we kind of expect everyone to have at least 3 different speeches they can pick around to give, and having heard her a number of times speak, I think she has at least 3 different speeches that she can give and apply them to the appropriate audience, speaking to junior high kids, speaking to high school teachers, doing Toastmasters. So, different ways to tell the stories and parts of the stories. Okay, do I see any other hands? I'm sure she'll value any comments from any of her QS.
Richard Schreiner.
I don't see any.
Snyder.
Richard Snyder.
Richard.
Oh, okay, Richard.
Right here.
I didn't see it.
Okay. Thank you, Hilda, for a very powerful speech. I taught adult English as a second language for almost 20 years, and some of my students had very incredible stories, much like your own. Very powerful. I think you're right on with, we take freedom for granted in America. So I think that's great. Maybe expand on that too. The feeling about how precious freedom is and how much we take it for granted until we don't have it. The one thing I noticed that you tended to do, you looked away a number of times from the audience, from the camera. And so that would be my only caution. Great message. And I can see where this would be a wonderful flag waving speech for the power of what you went through and you survived and you can talk about and you've written about. And I think you would be an excellent addition to our qualified speaking team.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. That's very nice.
Let's see the other hands there. I see some other faces, but I didn't see other hands. Okay, Michael, Alexander.
Well, I think you had 3 powerful speeches here. And the images were great, and the messages were great. And that's very wonderful. But I did feel, and it's a little bit like what Michael Ozer was saying, because it was 3 speeches, you need to pull each of them separately and get the flow strong so that we hear each of them.
Okay.
Because the way you gave it, I felt each one diluted the others a little bit.
Okay.
Now, as I say, each one was powerful. I also felt that I would like to have seen a little bit more control of your gestures, more power there. And I would have liked to have seen you look up a little bit more directly at us and impressive, because the thought of coming to America, or the thought of suffering beforehand, the sort of coming there, great stuff, really great stuff. But I wanted to hear when you got here, I wanted to really hear and feel in the emotional upbeat. I wanted to feel it from you. Good stuff. I think a little bit more refinement, and you've got 3, not 1, but 3 real winning speeches there.
Barely handle one.
Okay, do I have any other QSs to
Thank you.
have comments? And really actually give a little bit of time to somebody who's not a QS after all of our speakers. So,
Oh.
Jeremiah, okay, we have some here. So Jeremiah, okay. So.
Thank you. Hilda, I love your speech. Your passion for the topic was amazing, and that came through a lot. And I appreciate that. I enjoyed the topics. I enjoyed the different levels of it as you kind of went through. And part of the process, especially in the longer speech, is finding things to be able to add and kind of on. I really think you had some great thought there, and it really gave us a very good timeline of as you were going through. You kind of started with your opening, and then you gave us that transition and timeline all the way through to wherever you went to the first mall. All the 7-Eleven, or I like to call it heaven, whichever one you want to call it. But a couple of suggestions I would have as you're growing on this is I felt like you stepped on your why a lot in the beginning. You kept on talking about it, but then you never gave us that chance to really absorb and kind of think about the power of that why, of the people that maybe didn't make it, or the people that were standing there and going through that.
Okay.
And I would have loved to have seen you really just slow that part down.
Okay.
Maybe limit those down a little bit.
Yeah.
So that way, make that your time piece all the way throughout. As you're going through your speech, really tie in that why and really just make that dramatic and slow that down and let us just absorb, because there's a lot of emotions that you were bringing into that, which I thought was really good. But I felt like I was moving on to the next section a little bit faster.
You're right.
Also, I loved your ending. I loved how you ended it with the shorts. That was super powerful. The other thing I would suggest is kick those shoes off. You have shoes that you kick off and finish it off with just you have these shorts and take off those shoes and just really kind of close out. I thought that was great. But you did a great job today, and I really appreciate it. Just as everybody else said, you're going to be an amazing addition. So congratulations.
Thank you. Those were very good points. Slowing it down, making it one speech instead.
You think you might make a good, remember Jeremiah had a keynote speaker at a conference or a training or something, that might make a good keynote speaker for an audience of district leaders go on. Okay, and I'm going to give an opportunity for a couple more comments from those people in the audience who are not qualified speakers. All the qualified speakers have made their comments. Is there anybody else who would like to have a comment? I can't imagine the chairman. That's another comment. From 797 and from debate, so on. Any comments or anybody else? Okay. All right, we will now go on and hand the lecture and charge of the lecture over to Michael Alexander. I wish everyone to make sure they get their votes in for our qualifying speaker.
You're next.
And
You're next.
I'm not even sure what the
Yeah.
order is now, because we handed that over to,
Funny.
I guess my wife is not next. I will let her take it over here. I will put the microphone down and listen to her. She'll like that part.
Thank you very much. And I won't say good luck to Hilda in the votes because it's a reward for skill and for improvement. But I will say that I am delighted and I hope that your presentation goes through properly as it should. Give me a second here because for some reason my system isn't properly but our next speaker will be Connie Jameson. Connie has been asked to fill in at the last minute. And one of the geniuses of a good speaker is the ability to do exactly that. Connie is a DTM, qualified speaker, a past Speakers Bureau chair, and a retired elementary school teacher, as well as being a published author. In this case, she appreciates the fact that Toastmasters helps one develop the communication and leadership skills, but also provides opportunities to inform and encourage others. Her speech to become qualified speaker encouraged individuals to become blood donors. Another of her presentations encouraged others in the values of writing and encouraged their consideration to become a published author. Qualified speakers should, however, have more than one speech prepared to present to various audiences, and she has done so tonight in short time because she didn't have a lot of advance notice. So she'll share an additional presentation that she hopes later to take on the road. It will encourage others on yet another important topic. Please welcome Connie Jameson, presenting Richard. Richard, Connie Jameson.
I first met Richard in the words of a song by one of my favorite duos, Simon and Garfunkel. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, any welcome guests, I share the lyrics of that song to introduce you to Richard Corey. They say that Richard Corey owns one half of this whole town with political connections to spread his wealth around. Born into society, a banker's only child, he had everything a man could want: power, grace, and style. But I work in his factory, and I curse the life I'm living, and I curse my poverty. And I wish that I could be, oh, I wish that I could be Richard Corey. The papers print his picture almost everywhere he goes. Richard Corey at the opera, Richard Corey at a show. And the rumor of his parties and the orgies on his yacht, oh, he surely must be happy with everything he's got. But I work in his factory, and I curse the life I'm living, and I curse my poverty. And I wish that I could be, oh, I wish that I could be I wish that I could be Richard Cory. He freely gave to charity. He had the common touch. And they were grateful for his patronage, and they thanked him very much. So my mind was filled with wonder when the evening headlines read, Richard Cory went home last night and put a bullet through his head. But I work in his factory, and I curse the life I'm living, and I curse my poverty. And I wish that I could be, oh, I wish that I could be Richard Cory. I discovered that the story of Richard Cory was much earlier than the Simon and Garfunkel song. There was a poem by Edward Arlington Robinson, first published in 1897, also called Richard Cory. I now share that with you. Whenever Richard Cory went downtown, people on the pavement looked at him. He was a gentleman from soul to crown, clean-favored and imperially slim. And he was always quietly arrayed, and he was always human when he talked. But still, he fluttered pulses when he said good morning, and he glittered when he walked. And he was rich. Yes, richer than a king, and admirably schooled in every grace. In fine, we thought that he was everything to make us wish that we were in his place. So on we worked and waited for the light and went without the meat and cursed the bread. And Richard Cory, one calm summer night, went home and put a bullet through his head. Both stories of Richard Cory, the song and the poem, I think are powerful, thought-provoking stories. I thought, wouldn't it be great to be able to interview Cory, Richard Cory? The big question, of course, would
We seem to have lost the connection to the main room. I hope we will get it back. Connie, we can see you again. They have to put the microphone on. You've been muted. You've got us sitting on the edge of our seat, but we need the technical people to. There we go.
okay. This is strange. You went home and put a bullet through your head. What was home? I'm sure a huge mansion, but perhaps it was cold and sterile. Elegant, but empty. Empty of warmth, companionship, laughter, love. The rumors, Richard, rumors of parties, orgies, real or just rumors? Rumors because our assumptions that people like you would naturally have lives filled with fun, frolic, and friends. Did you? And if you threw those big parties, did you enjoy them, or were they just for show for others? In the poem, Richard, you were described as going downtown and townsfolk viewing you with awe and admiration. But in my mind, I see you alone. Did you have any pals, buddies, to join you. Real friends, not those that were just there for show or to get what they could get. Real friends who cared about you. Asked another way, Richard, did you indeed have it all, but more? Insecurities, loneliness, depression, inner demons. Sorry, Richard, but too often we have the assumption that because someone has wealth, looks, talents, they also have happiness, fun, friends, inner peace, and don't have to deal with daily problems, frustrations, insecurities as we common folk do. But that's not true, is it, Richard? When I think of the lessons from the Richard Cory story, I think of money can't buy happiness. Don't judge a book by its cover. We don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Or walk a mile in my shoes to know the real me. Do you know of other Richards? Perhaps people you've met, people on television, the movie stars, the people in the news. Perhaps you recall people from your past, especially those school years. The star athlete, Miss Personality, life of the party, Mr. Dreamboat Handsome, brilliant student. These Richards were assuredly on the fast track to success. They had a bright future ahead. In some cases, we were shocked to see what actually happened down the road. Example, superstar athlete, signs big contract, has loads of adoring fans, fame and fortune, bright future ahead, and then ends up alcoholic, bankrupt, drug addict, suicidal. What happened? What went wrong? What did we miss? The Richard Cory type Richards, those stories can be sad, depressing. So let's look at another group of Richards, quite the opposite of Richard Cory. I'll call them reverse Richards. These Richards do not have fame and fortune. They are not admired. No, these Richards, we just walk by, barely notice. They fade into the background, just blend in. Plain, ordinary Richards. We pay them little heed, have low expectations of them. But behind that outward appearance, that first impression, we may be shocked, amazed at the treasure hidden within. Some examples, little meek and mild, the shy, quiet, timid girl that goes to try out for the school play. What's she doing here? She gets the role and gives a powerful, amazing performance on the stage. The fumbling, bumbling new professor has students thinking, oh, brother, we have to sit through weeks and weeks and weeks of boring lectures. No, Mr. Professor shares a wealth of information and ideas and quickly becomes a favorite of the students. New office hire. Wow, look at her, that face and figure. Guess we know why she was hired. I suppose that means that now the rest of us have to do half of her job for her. But new hire turns out to be very professional, smart, efficient, friendly, not the blonde bimbo that they expected, but perhaps the brilliant blonde. Elderly new neighbor, shuffling along in his old-fashioned mismatched clothes. Johnny's mother tells him to go on over and help rake the leaves in his yard. "Aw, Mom," as he reluctantly heads out the door. But coming back in, oh, Mom, wow, he is so interesting. You wouldn't believe it. I love his stories. One of my favorite examples of a reverse Richard is Susan Boyle. Years ago, Susan was a contestant on the television show Britain's Got Talent. As Susan walked up on the stage, you could see audience members roll their eyes, shake their heads, and have smirks on their faces. After all, Susan Boyle was a plump and plain 47-year-old frumpy-looking lady who shared that she wanted to become a professional singer. But when Susan started to sing, I Dreamed a Dream, mouths dropped in amazement. Audience members were on their feet, giving her a standing ovation for the entirety of her performance and cheering her. Comments from the judges included, "You are the biggest surprise I've ever experienced. You were stunning." And another, "You know, everyone was against you to start. This should be a wake-up call." Yes, indeed. You can watch Susan Boyle and her audition on YouTube. I urge you to do so. It's a beautiful, fun, uplifting, hopeful experience. It brought a happy tear to my eye again. Susan's dream did come true. I own 3 CDs of her beautiful songs. But how many people are out there with dreams and talents, but they don't come true because they're not noticed, they're not encouraged, they're not given the chance? Oh, now's the time for a Toastmaster commercial. Yes, Toastmasters has and will continue to help so many Richards achieve their dreams. Are you a Richard? I know I am. I'm a reverse Richard. If you were to ask anybody in my high school or college classes whether I would ever be here or speaking anywhere in front of a group, the answer would be a resounding no. Yes, Toastmasters can change lives, providing the self-confidence, the speaking and leadership skills. But we must remember, we are Toastmasters. And we must realize the importance in recognizing the Richards out there and help them and guide them. I conclude by sharing that I love the sayings that seem to fit the Richard Cory story. Don't judge a book by its cover. Walk a mile in my shoes. But best of all, yes, best of all, might be another. And it's just 2 words that my fellow Toastmaster, Rochelle Harrison, gave in response to a table topic. When Rochelle was asked what words of advice she'd give her children, she replied, "Be kind. Be kind. You never know what someone is going through." May we always remember to be kind to each other, to ourselves, and to all those Richards in our life. Mr. Toastmaster.
That was marvelous. That really was. That was not only inspiring in general, but the delivery was poetic. It really flowed. So, well, to be honest with you, we expect a lot of you. I can't call you a Richard or an anti-Richard, Connie, but you have, let there be no question, hit us with a powerful inspiration, and a choice to live our lives with a different sense of each other. So thank you. And I can already see that our next speaker is getting prepared, getting wired up. Our next speaker, of course, is Jeremiah Lyle. I'm sorry. My apologies, sir. Jeremiah has been a Toastmaster, a director for the District 12, not once, but twice. The length of his tenure in service is matched only by the length of his beard. But today, he's going to present to us a simple question. Is it really our opinion? Jeremiah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guests. I got to tell you something. I belong to the greatest generation. I was born in 1981. Whenever I was a kid, we would go out, we would catch butterflies, we would play baseball, we would get dirt on our knees. And then as I grew, everything changed. Dial-up internet started. Do we all remember dial-up internet? Remember, you'd take your computer, you'd plug it in, it'd go, and then from there, you'd wait 10 to 15 minutes and hopefully get to the page of AOL. Maybe net zero if you paid for the disk. But then life started advancing. Next thing you know, I got my first flip phone. I'd flip it open. I could store all 10 numbers. But then technology started, and now we have computers on our phones. We could take them anywhere. I could travel the world and be able to find everything. Not only that, but also, if I leave my phone at home, my watch will do the same thing. I could take all my calls. I could search the internet. As a matter of fact, I could check social media from my watch, my phone, and here very soon, who knows, maybe from a set of glasses. You see, I have had the luxury and opportunity in life to be able to see changes. I saw MySpace start. We all remember MySpace. That's our introduction to coding. I got a chance to be able to witness the internet just by dialing in, then DSL. Now we have Cat5, and we have all these other great things. But ironically enough, things changed. As technology advanced, we had more technology at our hands and social media came on. You have to start wondering, what do we really believe? What do we really think? Because you see, today, my friends, we're going to dive into two subjects. We're going to dive into social media, and we're also going to dive into the internet. And we're going to talk a little bit about these topics in regards to how those ideas are potentially changing the way you think. So let's start with social media. How many of us have a social media? Everybody? Okay, I love social media. I love Facebook. Every year I get a video that shows up on my feed, and it's a video of my high school wrestling coach getting beat up in UFC. And I send it to all the guys on the varsity team, and we still make fun of them. It's a great video. It's Paul Herrera. If you haven't seen it, it's in UFC Ultimate Knockouts #1. I highly suggest it, okay? He's the guy that got beat up by Big Daddy Goodrich. Go look it up. But I share it to my friends. But the interesting thing is, though, as soon as I share that, I get another UFC video and another UFC video. And all of a sudden, that's all my feed is. And I start wondering why. Or I talk to my good friend Suzanne over here, and we're talking about something very cool. And next thing I know, I happen to pull up my phone, and wouldn't you know, it's like Mark Zuckerberg standing right next to me, because that's all I see on my Facebook. You see, as you're doing social media, there was a documentary that came out, Social Dilemma.
And that's what kind of prompted this whole speech. And it's a great documentary that actually talks about some of the things that social media does. And the first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about echo chambers. Echo chambers, in case you're wondering, that is actually where whenever you see content, it starts to only give you that content. And you see more and more of that exact content. So what happens is if I start watching something political or I start watching something that I want to find out about, the next thing I know is I see that more and more. And I start thinking, that's what everybody else is thinking. My friends list will all of a sudden change on Instagram. It'll go from maybe people before to a new group of people that start having the same mindsets, the same thought processes. There was actually a survey done from Tobias and Blank, and it says that most people do consume news from various sources, while around 8% consume media with low diversity. Similarly, in 2022, it showed that in Twitter, that behavior resembles that of an echo chamber. You see, what happens is a small group of users begin to share populist politician followers mostly, thus creating a homogeneous online space. So what that's saying is that group of people start sharing the same post, and it starts sharing and compounding. And that becomes a space for that group. So then your inner circle becomes of the same mindset. Do we know anybody like that? Does anybody? I know I do. I call them flatlanders. Anybody know what like flat earthers are? Flat earthers are the ones that think that the world's flat and you're just going to fall off the side. Clearly, they never bought a globe. But needless to say, there's a group of people that strongly believe that. The next one is online bullying, online harassment and cyberbullying. You see, it's really easy to be a bully whenever you're behind a computer screen, right? Whenever I was a kid, it was a little bit harder because you had to go say it to their face. But what you will find is from the Anti-Defamation League, over the past year, online hate and harassment rose sharply for adults and teenagers 13 to 17. Among adults, 52% reported being harassed online in their lifetime, which is the highest number that's been seen in over 4 years, up from 40%. Both adults and teens also reported being harassed within the past 12 months, up from 23% in 2022 to 33% in 2023 for adults. And for adults, it's 36 to 51%. Overall, reports of each type of hate and harassment increased for nearly every measure within almost every demographic group. You see, what's happening is they can't escape that, because so now what happens is now you're in this group and you have cyber bullies, and they are starting to pinpoint you and starting to focus on you. How do you get away? I remember whenever I was in school, if there was a bully, you got to go home. They couldn't call you, and if they did, your parents usually answered the phone. There was that break, right? I have a 17-year-old daughter. All it takes is them sending a message. Then they create another account and they send another message. Then their friends send messages. And not only do they have it at school, but now they start getting it at home too. So you see, they never get a chance to be able to get away. So what does that do? That starts creating dissension, hatred a little bit of fear. Starts changing the way they act, the way they think. And lastly, with social media, we're going to talk about misinformation. Misinformation is literally just a click away. And I found this story that I wanted to share with you. It was actually in August 20th of 2022. There was a video that came out on TikTok. TikTok, for those of you, is something my daughter would be able to explain way better than me. But a TikTok video posted that Disney World was actually going to lower the drinking age to 18. And they were currently in court with the state of Florida to get it legally lowered for Disney World only. Sounds crazy, right? That actually became a news article. It ended up going viral online. The news actually reported it as though it was actually happening. People started sharing it. People started going to Disney World to start drinking at 18. All because somebody created one video. You see, just like that, that misinformation was able to be shared and spread. And a study from USC in over 2,400 Facebook users says the habit of social media users are bigger drivers of misinformation spread than individual attributes. We know that from prior research, people don't process information critically anymore, and others form opinions based on political bias, also which affects their ability to recognize false stories online. So you see, in just these past couple of minutes, we've been able to find ways that just by using social media, it's been changing the way people are thinking. They're believing this misinformation. They start telling their friends, which then starts spreading that misinformation. We've talked about bullying. We've talked about echo chambers. But now what about the internet? And the internet is information overload. How many of you go onto the internet and you'll search one thing and you can find everything this way or that way? And it doesn't matter. It's whatever side you're looking for, you can find it. If you want to find something about how the earth is flat, you will find it. If you want to find something about Disney World serving alcohol at 18, you'll be able to find multiple articles about that. See, we're in a society now to where it's almost impossible for us to be able to tell really what's truth and what's not, because you can find sites, you can find information, you can find articles that people think they truly believe. You see, and it's actually creating divides among us amongst that same process, because what's happening is because it's now dividing people with that information overload. So they start diving to one side to try to be able to find that information. The next one is social comparisons and inadequacies. I've been practicing that word all day long, in case you're wondering. But how many of us see that? You watch videos and you see a video and you're like, yeah, my butt looks as good as Kim Kardashian's, 100%. That's what, but what we don't realize is a lot of those are doctored up. They're fake videos. As we heard from our previous speaker, we sometimes don't know how their lives really are on the back set, because the video shows one thing and we believe that's who we are judging ourselves to. And we think that is the person we need to be, the guy at the gym doing this, or we need to be the model doing this, or whatever that may be. But that starts creating inaccuracies amongst us. There's actually two different effects to this. There's a positive effect, which is a downward social comparison. And that is, you are basically comparing yourself to motivate yourself. You're saying, look at how well I've done compared to somebody else. You're basically looking down on somebody, is what that is. And that's positively making you feel better. Oh, look at that person struggling. That means I'm that much better. But then there is also a negative effect, which is an upward comparison, which means we are always trying to be like that person. And you see, the internet and social media and all of those sites give us that down and up. And at times, we don't know really what's truth or what's fake. And it becomes so hard because there's so much content to be able to flow through. How do we discern what is the right information? And lastly, is a digital divide. See, as a society, especially out here, we don't realize sometimes that not everybody has the same access. COVID created a pretty heavy digital divide. It started giving a lot of opportunities for those that had access to computers and internets to those that didn't. I'm going to read you a study from the National Center of Education Statistics. And it says that students who did not have access to internet or only had dial-up in their homes were broken down as followed. 27% were American Indian, 19% were Black, 17% were Hispanic, 12% were Pacific Islanders, 7% were 2 or more races, 7% were whites, and 3% were Asians. So those are people that did not have access to items. So so what happens is they don't have the opportunity to be able to still have the same resources we have. And thanks to online uses, we start creating a digital divide of those of the haves and have-nots. And in that, what you find is you start finding low performance, competitive edge, convenience in learning, and difference learning experiences. You see, those that don't have those opportunities started realizing that they weren't getting that. They weren't getting the same opportunities as others. You see, as a society, I really rely on the internet. As somebody that works from home all the time, I'm always on the internet doing something, usually work stuff. But if somebody doesn't have that same access, they're not able to have the same opportunities as me. So it creates that divide. So you see, today we've talked about 6 different things that really kind of start augmenting how we believe, how we think. So if you start thinking about that, the next time you get ready to post, the next time you're talking to somebody, or you say, hey, did you see this article? Ask yourself, is that really what you believe? Or is it you're being led to believe that because somebody's only guiding your mindset that way? Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Jeremiah. I'd say that was a wonderful speech, but I have to look at the postings on LinkedIn and Instagram before I know. Our final speaker for the evening was the youngest qualified speaker that District 12 has ever had. And he's also one of the most impressive. Now, historically, everyone knows that when you go to school, as soon as you come back in September, after summer vacation, they say, quick, write your essay on what I did this summer. Well, that's great. But sometimes we need to learn instead, and particularly parents need to learn, but everybody needs to learn, what did you do in school? I remember when I came home from college one day, my dad said, what did you learn in school? I said, I learned how to juggle. And he said, terrific, juggle for me. Now I can see where my money is going. Well, Nathan's son here is going to tell us where his tuition money is going, because he's going to talk to us about Vanderbilt. Ladies and gentlemen, Nathan's son.
Thank you. Would be all right if you turned off the projector? Thanks. So hello, everyone. This is precisely how I choose to spend my evenings. And this is the most enjoyable way in my mind. And basically, it's a small, intimate gathering, some of my closest friends. Now, if for whatever reason, some catastrophic mistake occurs while I'm giving this speech, I'd just like to remind you of the words of Mrs. Jameson. Be kind. You never know what someone is going through. I've been going through a lot this summer, so there it is. In this speech, I'd like to go over very briefly what I've done with Toastmasters, not only in high school, but also in college as well. And then also touch on my time at Vanderbilt, the first year that I've been there ever since I transferred. So starting off, many years back, Mr. Jameson helped set up a new gavel club in the Riverside area. And I was one of those initial people who joined. I'm not entirely sure if it's still up or if it exists at all, but in the time that it did exist, it was truly one of the best experiences that I've ever had for public speaking. Every single week, we'd show up, we'd give some sort of random impromptu speech. And then we'd also give a speech that we prepared. And this was terrific for me because it helped to not only hone my skills in public speaking, but also just dealing and interacting with people socially. And this is especially important for me because I've been homeschooled, not just for high school, not just for middle school, but pretty much for my entire formative years prior to going off to college. And I don't know about you, but in homeschooling circles, there's always this trope that homeschoolers are socially awkward. They don't know how to speak to people. They're very shy. They don't do anything with other people, right? Like I'm here with you, interacting with other people. And that's always just been the stereotypical view that people have had of homeschoolers. And so being able to go to Toastmasters on a weekly basis, interact with other people, and learn how to speak professionally, how to speak in a public setting, that's just been an invaluable experience for me. And it's helped not just academically in college, it's helped when I've gone to Vanderbilt, it's helped when I'm giving just random speeches to find folks like you. Whenever I have these opportunities, these speech contests, these speech events that I have to go to, it's been great for that. So I've been doing Gavel Club, and fast forward to my time in college, I decided to take a few years, not off of college, but just at a community college. And I'm not sure if you guys remember this, but from roughly 2021 to 2022 especially, there was like this big event, this catastrophe that everyone was talking about, right? And so that kind of caused a little bit of apprehension for me. So I thought, why don't I just stay at home, do community college, and then if all goes well, I'll transfer, right? And so during that time, I still continued with Toastmasters. I still continued to hone my speaking ability. And during that time, I had the great opportunity of basically applying to be a qualified speaker. I had to deliver a speech about the impact of COVID and how it affected online learning for our students, because that was such a huge deal. And just like our former speaker brought up, there's a huge advantage to be conferred whenever people have the ability to go online, as opposed to a person who has very spotty internet access where he can't read the material, he can't communicate with his teachers on Zoom. That's just a huge disparity. And that's going to be amplified for the coming years. Kids who have missed a grade or two in school because of COVID, they're going to have to deal with those effects all the way through their high school careers, into college, and they may not ever get back that time that they lost. So that's especially important to me. And it's something that I felt personally during COVID as a student who was going to school and who had to deal with this sort of issue. So that's what I gave my speech about. And that was basically the 2 years that I spent at community college. I went to Mount San Antonio College. I'm not sure if anyone knows of that place. It's an excellent school, offers excellent transfer opportunities. As long as you put in the good work and as long as you do what you're supposed to do, I think you can get excellent results in terms of transferring. So that was high school, Mount Sac Community College, and then Vanderbilt. So towards the end of my second year, I had already put in the applications to transfer. I had applied to quite a few schools, and I honestly was not even sure whether or not I was going to get in, right? To be perfectly honest, I put in the work. I got good grades. I did extracurricular stuff, but you never really can tell exactly what happens with these admissions processes. But thankfully, all went well. I got into Vanderbilt, and I've been there for the past year. It's been an excellent opportunity for me. And one of the things that I believe helped the most was Toastmasters, was this public speaking experience. And the funny thing about Vanderbilt is they try to put an emphasis on small class sizes. So you could literally be in a class where there's 5 people and the professor, and that's it. So you really have the opportunity to speak to your peers and to have that time in the class to voice your own opinions and interact with the professors because the class sizes are so small, right? If it's an auditorium of, say, 1,000 people, you could just be a faceless person out there in the ether and nobody even knows who you are, and the professor doesn't really care, right? But with this experience of having small class sizes, I found that I had the opportunity to actually speak consistently. And Toastmasters helped a lot with that. Being able to articulate whatever it is you're thinking, to say, look, this is what I'm trying to tell and communicate to my audience, and how do I put it into words? How do I speak to people so that they understand? Because ultimately, in my experience, if the audience doesn't understand, it's your fault. You didn't do a good enough job of articulating and constructing your ideas so that they're able to receive it. And it varies, of course. There are different audiences that you encounter. Some may be college experience. They might be in an academic setting. And you may also be speaking to people who perhaps are in a different sort of career field. They may not have college experience. They may be Toastmasters. They may be experienced speakers, right? Or they could be amateur speakers. Who knows? Right. And so being able to conform your speaking style to whatever the needs are of your audience is something that I learned through Toastmasters and that I've carried throughout my adult life. So now I've got one more year at Vanderbilt, hopefully. If all goes well, I've got one more year and I'll be able to graduate in 2025. And I'm definitely looking forward to that. It's going to be a hard year, but we'll make it. We'll do well. All good things. And I'm very excited for that. So with the remaining time we have now, I'd like to open it up to questions. And it's not that the questions are sort of the tail end of the speech. I'd actually like to devote the majority of the time that I have to questions. That way I can sort of focus on whatever it is you guys are interested in. So by all means, we've got a relatively small audience here. So you guys have the floor. So whoever would like to ask a few questions, go ahead.
What's your major?
Political science.
Which purpose of?
Law school at this point in time. I honestly have no idea like what will happen, but that is the plan at this point. Law school. Yeah.
Yes.
Because I enjoy reading about the law and because quite frankly, I'm not entirely sure what other field interests me more than this like intersection between politics, history, social sciences, philosophy. That sort of all gets incorporated into the profession of the law. So that's what I personally appeal to me about that. Yeah. Yes.
Something very valuable that you learned in your first year in Vanderbilt.
I'd say it comes down to doing the things you have to do when you have to do them. Right? Some people are tempted, myself included, to put off the paper that's due or studying for the final that's going to be due in like 3 days. That's something you should not be doing. And I think that ultimately it has to be sort of a balance between enjoying your time there and then also studying. And I know that sounds exceptionally cliche, but it absolutely is true. There's times when you have to enjoy yourself, right? And then you just have to approach this whole situation with a mentality of, look, I'm going to be doing my work first, and then I'll enjoy myself afterwards. And you just got to be disciplined that way. What is that? I have 8 minutes?
There's three people with questions.
Oh, okay. Right. Forgot about that. The web audience. Yeah.
Say David Flores' name.
All right. David Flores.
Thank you, David. Enjoyed your presentation. How would you have
Thank you.
How would you have compared your speaking skills to the other students? Did they show, was it obvious that they didn't belong to Toastmasters?
I'd say that you'd have to consider not only my time at Vanderbilt, but also at Mount SAC. And for those two, I'd say, obviously, you'll see that the people in Vanderbilt, they've been selected because of their good academics, because of the fact that they are capable students. And so, yeah, most of them are pretty good speakers. And quite frankly, if I didn't have that experience in Toastmasters, I think it would be severely at a deficit compared to everyone else. But because of Toastmasters, everything turned out well. And, not to brag or anything, but I think I'd rank top of the class or somewhere near the top for that. Sharon.
Hi, great speech.
Hi. Thank you.
Growing up, I read several books that really inspired me and really changed the trajectory of my worldview. The Robe is one of them. The Warrior Woman is another one. Right now, I'm really into Malcolm Gladwell. I love all his books. He's very inspiring. Do you have some authors that you've read that have just really kind of revolutionized your worldview?
Absolutely. Sharon, that is such an amazing question. I cannot phrase that question enough. because so much of our worldview is shaped by the information that we consume. And for the longest time in human history, that actually has been books. We didn't have videos, we didn't have internet, it was just books. And I like to think I've kept that tradition of learning from books. In terms of authors, C.S. Lewis cannot be beat, in my opinion, in terms of like a modern author that's accessible to everyday people. It's easy to read, easy to digest to a certain extent, right? His ideas do get more complex the deeper in you go, but C.S. Lewis, he covers pretty much all the important aspects of the humanities, whether it's religion, history, politics. He's got at least a couple writings throughout all of those issues. So C.S. Lewis for sure. In terms of just authors in general, it's so funny you brought this up because I was just thinking about, oh, what sorts of literature do I truly enjoy? What do I love reading, right? And I would say just read throughout English history, like all of English literature. And I actually had this book. It was from Beowulf all the way up to, I believe, Byron. It was like Enlightenment period, somewhere around there. And it was just a whole breadth of English literature. And it was some of it fictional, some of it poetry, some of it history. It's all absolutely fantastic. And the reason I say English literature is because we speak English, we're English speakers, right? And I think it's important to understand that heritage. Longfellow is a very, very good poet. I was just thinking about a couple of his lines. From the Psalm of Life. How many of you know the Psalm of Life by Longfellow? No? Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Okay, so amazing author. I just cannot praise his work enough. He actually wrote this poem, A Psalm of Life, and it was a poem written for himself. He didn't intend to publish it, and it was just about his own struggles, whether that was with depression, whether that was with his own personal psychological failings. And he wrote it for himself, to himself, intended solely to be read by himself, but thankfully it got published. And one of my favorite lines from this poem is, in the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb-driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. That is just the most beautiful concept ever. I mean, the world is so chaotic. There's so much stuff going on, and really do feel like just a tiny little ant, right, in the vast scheme of humanity throughout history. Just one person, what could I possibly do? But Longfellow is basically teaching us, look, be deliberate with your actions. Know what you want to do. Have a goal. Stick to it. And then actually fulfill that goal and do something. Don't be like dumb-driven cattle where, oh, the world is just happening to me. I have no agency. I'm not doing anything. I'm not independently minded. No, stick to your plan. Have a plan, first of all, and be a hero in the strife. That's just beautiful. I recommend all of you read Longfellow. I recommend all of you just at least examine those ideas and hopefully take it to heart. So thank you, Sharon. Beautiful question. I love it. All right, Mr. Jameson.
First, you mentioned going into law.
Yeah.
Have you seen yourself someday as an elected politician?
Perhaps. I think that when it comes to planning out your life, I definitely stress the short to intermediate term. So that would be like anywhere from a year to 5 years, I'd say. After 10, it becomes a little bit spotty. Like it becomes more vague and generalized. Like, of course, I kind of have a plan, generally speaking, of what I'd like to do 50 years from now. But the circumstances of the world are so turbulent to the point where I don't know if it's realistic to plan out the specific details of your life 50 years from now. I just tend to focus on, okay, what can I immediately do in the short to intermediate term to assess my goals and to develop skills so I'm useful, right? And so going to college, 1 year from now, I plan on graduating with a decent grade. And that's kind of the short term. And then obviously that sort of work, a few internships, apply for graduate school, that sort of thing. But yes, I'm definitely interested in that. And I'd like to just take a brief moment. This is not a partisan idea that I'm conjecturing into this discussion, but truly, I love this country and I love America. And there's so much potential that we have as a country that, quite frankly, it's kind of a waste what we've been doing so far, just in the past couple of decades, right? You think about the fundamental principles that we need for a successful country, the fundamental elements, right? We have a large population. We have even energy independence, right? Who would have thought we actually have enough oil. We don't need to rely on anybody. We can fund all of our needs in terms of energy, in terms of human capital, intellectual capital. There's so much good that we could do in this country to improve it and to bring it into a second golden age. And if I have the opportunity to be a politician, to facilitate that in some way, absolutely, I would do that. That's my answer. All right. Amanda White.
So you said you were homeschooled and that kind of
Yeah.
changed your perspective. So if you were to go back or to talk to homeschool groups today, what would you change differently? When would you interject the Toastmaster ideas? How would you help those students that are going through that same perspective?
So just to clarify, you're asking me what I would change or whether or not I'm satisfied with currently my life as it has played out?
Well, a little bit about how it played out, but what would
Okay.
you change? How would you improve it? How would you use what you know to make it better for other people in that scenario?
Okay. Yeah, I personally try to ensure that homeschooling gets more access to these sorts of resources like Toastmasters. We actually got introduced by another homeschooling family in our cohort. So they told us about Toastmasters. They introduced us to Mr. Jameson. That's how we got that opportunity. If it were not for them, I don't think I would have had access to Toastmasters. I wouldn't have been able to take advantage of this opportunity. So I'd say just ensuring that more homeschoolers are aware of the resources that they have at their disposal, right? Toastmasters, it's open to anybody, right? You could just be a certain age, you can join a gavel club, right? Anybody can do it, any school, it doesn't matter. I also participated with Lions Club. That's another fantastic organization, and they did student speaker contests. So that's something that I participated in as well, and I just try to get the word out there. Yes. Michael Osier.
Oh, Nathan, to think we knew you when. So I know you got stuck on Longfellow, but how about the beat poets, especially Allen Ginsberg and Howell, which totally changed everything around censorship in the 50s and really changed every poet since then in the US has been totally affected by him. So Allen Ginsberg, Howell, I hope you've heard of it, the most famous of the beat poets. We also recommend Nelson Mandela's book, A Long Walk to Freedom, which really will change your life. That's all men. How about, someone like Brene Brown or famous thought Gertrude Stein, famous female thought leaders of the 20th century? We don't want you just reading the dead white men. That's my only thought on that. And by the way, I love going to Nashville. So last I checked, there's still a few distilleries very near the university. Corsairs downtown, Nelson Greenbrier, and of course, you're only 45 minutes from Jack Daniels. You better stop studying and take a few hours out to have a little sip of the good stuff from Tennessee whiskey. Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks, Mike. All I would say to that is, yes, it's very important to read the vast gamut of literature, but also understand how these people are affected by the world that they live in, right? What sorts of contemporary forces prompted them to write and think in those ways? So that's a very good point. In terms of other poets that I find to be quite important, Shelley's important. There was one very good bit of poetry by Richard Lovelace, whom I don't think anyone will have heard of because he wrote in the 16th century. He was a Cavalier poet, and it's just a fantastic poem. I don't have time to get into it, but definitely check out Richard Lovelace if you're interested. In terms of the microbreweries and the so-called fun things to do, I would say, Mike, do not let my calm intellectual demeanor fool you. I have certainly had a good time. I've had more than a good time, in fact. And I would say that's something that you kind of just have to be there to know about. So yeah, absolutely. Vanderbilt, whether that's Broadway or all the breweries that you can tour, or even just going to Gatlinburg, which is not Nashville, but a couple hours away. I'd say they're all very good opportunities. And yeah, pretty much the only thing that I lament is the fact that there's no skiing in the state. Like you have to go to West Virginia for that, and I'm big into skiing. So regrettably, it is what it is. But everything else is fantastic. But yeah, looking forward to winter. Hopefully it snows out there in Nashville. All right, any more questions? No more questions. My goodness. Anything? Nope. Okay. No more questions. Everything's good? All right, wonderful.
Thank you.
One more thing, I would like to urge all the people watching on Zoom, please, please come in person. It really is far more fun and far more interesting to like actually interact with people, you know? It's actually very, very different. You think it's the same, you can hear me, you can see me, but truly it isn't. So with that being said, Mr. Jameson.
I can step back in. All right, thank you, thank you. I wanted to explain my question about politics. In a previous life, when I was very politically active, I knew Mark Connell before he was a teacher, before he was a school board member, before he was a congressman. And you're head and shoulders above that person. You would be great congressman.
Thanks. I try.
Okay, thank you for being here. I so appreciate it. And I look forward to hearing from you next year.
Absolutely.
Okay. I am here to, Michael, and you have anything else? I don't want to step on your toes, but you're really in charge. I'm going to say goodbye and you're going to finish up whatever you need to do.
I just want to thank all of you for coming. I'm hoping that you all realize that we've had an experience which talks about everything from the process of escaping, because the importance of your why, and then we've gone through and shown what you can do with it. Whether you are as spontaneous as Connie and talks about the way things work, whether you're aware of the fact that we are not spontaneous, because we've listened to Jeremiah and we've let others do our spontaneity for us. We've watched Nathan do a question and answer session wonderfully and take the lessons that we have learned at Toastmasters and take them elsewhere. I'm delighted to have been part of this program. I hope you have all enjoyed it nearly as much as I have. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what it is that Tom, who's done a wonderful job of putting this stuff together, has planned for us next year, next month. Tom, take it away.
Okay, we have, thank you for that, taking over and running the meeting. Maybe by next month, I'll be in a little bit better shape. But we had a fun meeting, an interesting meeting, and a lot of hard work was put in by the speakers. Not so much hard work by me, but hard work by the speakers. And I appreciate everybody for being here. I need Nathan's parents are here to get his school report about how that their money was spent when they went out to Vanderbilt. I get a nice smile from them for that. A few times in the past, we've had programs. We're going to get a report from the district. If nothing else, maybe Jeremiah will give us a little bit of that. But in the past, we've had programs kind of together. Well, one was World Health Awareness Day, where we had 18 or 19 speakers talking about their various backgrounds in various countries. We also had Mother's Day and Father's Day, and we've had a couple of other special events. We're going to do another one in September. Seemed like an appropriate topic, even though I stole Rob Gunneman's idea, because he's putting together some videos on why I joined Toastmasters. But I began hearing some stories that were so great that I thought that'd be a perfect time. September, like first school starting and people starting to do things. Maybe this will be a stimulation to our district in terms of members. So we have 16, 18, 19 stories. I have quite a number of them accumulated already. We're going to focus on trying to get people to come in and tell their stories in person and give them first priority over speaking. But we'll find some interesting stories, or some I will share because those people could not make it. In fact, one of those I'll share, I'll tell you right now, past district governor, Paul Clark, joined Toastmasters in high school in the Gallo Club. And that was his first experience with Toastmasters, and went on to go on to be the district governor. And so maybe he'll be here to share his story, maybe not. We'll have 18 or so stories, some of them pretty special. And we look forward to that being our September meeting. October, we have, right now, we have 2 qualifying speeches and 2 of our qualified speakers, Susanna Lee and Dr. Diane Fiala, will be speaking with speeches they were given to national conventions, I think, on their particular issues. So that'll be that. We already have somebody signed up for. I think Judy is asked to speak in November, so we're keeping busy. And any information that you wish to share, other than, I know the biggest thing is making sure that your club officers are trained before the month of August is over. And there is proxies that need to be given in, so let me give this to Jeremiah. Yeah, and we did pass district director, so what's going on?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. As Tom talked about, we do have quite a lot of things going on right now. Most importantly, this upcoming week is International Convention. Quite a lot of our members are going. It's going to be in Anaheim. If you are a club president or a secretary or know somebody that is that, make sure that they have assigned their proxy or will be there to vote as an opportunity for our clubs to have their voice heard. So that way we can able to vote on our next year's board officers, all of that. So please make sure they do that. That needs to be done by, I believe, this Monday. Then also the training that Tom was talking about is on the 22nd. That's going to be online. You'll find all the information on the newsletter that Frankie puts out along with Rob and Sharon Kenty. So take a look for that. And also on the 24th, we are having our award celebration. So we're going to be celebrating last year's accomplishments. We have a keynote speaker, which is our very own Mark Panesh. He's actually going to be our keynote speaker that day and giving a great keynote for us. That's going to be in Redlands at the First United Methodist Church. If you have any questions about that, or you can also find the registration on the Tuesday email. So those are all coming up here this month.
Okay, and I just remembered one other thing in county is part of my Speakers Bureau news that I've been so slow about getting out, and I'm trying to do better. Anyway, QS's successes. And so if you've been a speaker at a conference, or if you have some particular accomplishment you would like to let me know, let her know, and we will make sure that's mentioned so that you get a little pat on the back of those things that you're out there doing. But I'm reminded of a particular success that I feel particularly proud about. It's not something that I did. It's something that will be being done during the next year because 2 of our qualified speakers, Richard Snyder and David Flores, are co-chairs of the District 100 Speakers Bureau. So I might give them a round of applause for going out on the world and helping other speakers bureaus. We're hoping to be able to do more cooperation between other speakers bureaus. I know Diane Fiala, for instance, is active at QS in District 49 in Hawaii. So we're hoping to have more cooperation between speakers bureaus, and we hope to see many more of you here in person next month, which is September. Anyway, first Wednesday of the month, is it always? I can't remember what it is. See you all next month. Thank you for being here.